Okay, it's 7 o'clock. We have a quorum of the Finance Committee here. I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Grafton Finance Committee for Wednesday, February 10th, 2021. This is being held through remote participation. I'm going to dispense with the reading of it. We will follow the rules set by the governor in his directions. I would entertain a motion from the Finance Committee to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, all those in favor by roll call. Barry?
Barry, aye.
Sue?
Sue, aye.
Andy?
Andy, aye.
Irene?
Irene, aye.
Heather?
Heather, aye.
Gopal?
Gopal, aye.
Mark, aye. So we'll call this meeting to order. We're going to go through just a couple of rules tonight that we're going to follow. We're going to turn the presentation over to Carter and allow him to present his budget to us. I'm going to ask everybody participating in the meeting tonight to use the raise your hand function so I can see you and call on you and allow you to ask questions. Any attendees that want to ask a question, you can do it through the Q&A function, or you can also use your raise the hand and we can promote you and have you talk and ask your question. So we're going to try to keep this as orderly as possible. We have a lot of information to cover tonight. Carter and Mary have been working very hard on this, and we look forward to hearing from Carter. So without any further ado, Carter, the floor is yours.
William, if you want to put this up. So let me say that tonight is not the 420 plus page budget book that you are used to getting, nor will it be that type of document this year. And we'll talk a little bit about the context of why that's happened, and then our view on the confidence level that you can have in this budget and the process going forward. First, let me say we have Evan Broussard with us, who's your incoming TA and who will be dealing with the defense of this or the changing of this. Mary Loria, who joined us on February 1, and we're really very happy to have a full-time town staff back into the accounting office. And William Blake, who some of you are getting to know and joined us on January 1 in the new position of management analyst and communications specialist. So moving forward into the basis of the budget here, title page, pretty easy. William, if you would, please. So you're going to, in tomorrow's email, a couple of documents. You're going to get a package on revenue estimates. There are some problems that we found in it as we got to the very end. You're also going to get the live Excel spreadsheet so you can do whatever what ifs you want to do. You're going to get the capital program package for both FY22 and the 5-year plan. There's a little bit of work in progress, but personally, I thought it worked out great. The department head requests were collected by the planning department, which forwarded everything to the CIPC. They had a ranking system. Everything was put in order. They submitted it to me. I had a few questions, some of which they're not going to be able to deal with till March, but I think we're aligned. And then we simply rationed the capital on the basis of what we had available and made some adjustments in keeping with their recommendations. I don't know, is Colleen with us tonight, Mark?
Yep, she's here.
Perfect. So we have the chair. We have at least two members of that CIPC with us. And personally, I think it respected both sides of the line. It allowed the department heads to present and defend their requests. It got some input from citizens, select board, finance committee, and others. And yet at the end of the day, it's the town administrator that puts his signature on the plan. You're going to get a PDF of the budget summary, and then and the budget, and then you're going to get the live budget file as well. And then you will get a PDF of the budget versus actual for FY20. How much was budgeted, how much was actually expended, to give you a sense of turnbacks. I'm always cautious of it. I believe that the best budget is one that's built from the ground up and questioned without respect to what prior expenditures were. But that's for you to decide. This was a request of the committee. And thankfully, Mary Lauria was in there and able to sort out how to get that printed out. And Anita Patel has been lending us some assistance in this gap period as well, and we certainly appreciate that. So those documents are truly all works in progress. One of the things that we found when we went to insert a $250,000 line item into one of your accounts was the numbers didn't move. They weren't built with formulaic tables, equals sum parens, a range of cells, and then a closed parens. They were built by actually adding every single cell that had a number into it. So that's been a bit of a challenge for us, and Mary's been a great lifesaver for me on that. And as you look at the brevity of the material, and as we caution you on the degree of confidence that you can have in these numbers, I want to try to put this into the context in which we've been operating under the last 6 months or so. The administrative assistant to the town accountant went fully remote in March and remains fully remote. And then there was a brief period of time when she was actually out completely on leave. The gap was plugged to some degree with a contract clerk who basically got the warrant completed. That was about what happened there. The town accountant, Ms. Patel, moved upstairs, gain for them, loss for us in mid-June. And we were not able to fill that position until February 1. That was filled for a few hours a week with a contract accountant, and Ms. Patel pitched in to help us out during periods of time. However, since June 15th, there's been no full-time staff in that accounting office for us to walk down, have conversations with, bounce ideas off of, learn how things had been done. As I say, Ms. Patel's been very helpful, but she also has a full-time job for the school department. The administrative assistant to the town clerk went out on leave in August and was out for close to 5 months. And the town clerk was on leave in the middle of September and was out almost 4 months. And you say, well, what does that have to do with the town administrator and the budget? At the end of the day, we spent a substantial amount of time, my time, working and being supportive of the assistant town clerk as he worked through the budget season, time that normally I would not have expended out of the limited hours that I was able to give you. The board retained me for 20. I think I probably have an average of about 30 or so. Last couple of weeks, certainly more is in the run up to the budget. The assistant town administrator quit with 3 days notice in the middle of September, and that position was empty for several months while we reformulated it and retained it. The assistant treasurer collector position has been vacant for almost 3 months, and the HR analyst, and there was no trained backup for the payroll clerk in your office. So in addition to all of those vacancies, we've had a substantial number of staff on remote working, which inhibits staff cohesiveness. And if you're me, very little people around to share institutional knowledge with you. And even in the last 30 days, we had 9 staff people who were quarantined or isolated, losing approximately 22 weeks of staffing time. 10 weeks of that 22 weeks was lost in the select board and the TA's office. So in addition to the normal and ordinary budget pressures, your unique budget template, which I don't think we used enough asterisks and frowns and pound signs to reflect what our experience with it was. That is the context in which this budget was prepared, and the reason that we will tell you about our level of confidence in it. So let's try to highlight first the major Uncontrollable cost drivers. I say uncontrollable because to a great deal they are. So your pension went up from Worcester Regional Retirement System. We'd sent that out to you about a month ago, approximately $275,000. Your health insurance is about $275,000 than last year. It went up 3%, but please remember you are adding in the fire department alone 3 full-time staff members. And we have to assume that they very well might be family members. So we assume the higher level of insurance plans for those. And we always allow, at least when I do, when preparing a budget, the possibility of someone coming into the pool or someone retiring.
Carter, can I interrupt you? Can I
Yes, of
interrupt you for a
course,
second and
please.
ask a question
Yep.
on the pension?
Please.
So if it went up 275, which is a pretty significant increase, does that take into account the 3 new full-time positions in the fire department? Are we going to get hit with that later?
You are going to get hit with that in approximately 18 months. You'll get some of it. There's an oddity, unlike private enterprise that many of you work with or are familiar with, and the pension systems in many other states. So let's say I'm in Michigan, I'm in Vermont, I'm in New Hampshire. I get a tax rate, if you will, or a pension rate from the pension board every year. And I pay that just like I pay Medicare, I pay Social Security, I pay everything else. So the pension system in Massachusetts is based upon a trailing assessment of your payroll. So you're actually generally running around 18 months behind. They look at what your salary was for that time period. The actuarial then crunches all of the salaries for everybody. They calculate what your assessment needs to be, and you simply get a bill. And so you will not see those assessments until roughly 18 months from now. They'll be broken into 2 pieces, Mark, because you'll have to be paying half of the salaries in one assessment year and then the other half. So you'll be paying 1/2 of a year for 1/2 the salaries in one assessment period. And then you will pay the full salary in the second assessment period when you have full 12 months.
And then we'll also get hit harder because they're group 4 employees.
Yes, you will. You should think, just for rough numbers, you should think 25 to 30% of their salaries coming off of the assessment from the pension.
Yep.
So whenever we do an override, in my experience, for public safety or for other employees, I always lump in that anticipated retirement assessment that I'm going to experience down the line, so that when it does come along, the monies have been built into the budget.
Yeah, we didn't anticipate that. We only anticipated salary, so that was a mistake.
I would encourage the community and your incoming TA, whenever you are looking at an override, to calculate the full. I know some people don't like the phrase, but the burden rate, the cost of the fringe benefits. Assume everyone's going to be a family member. Assume that's the health insurance cost. Assume dental. Assume this. Assume their workers' comp, and package that all into your override so that when those costs hit you, you do have something in the tank to pay for them. Salary reserve is in the unclassified. It is probably something different than you have seen before. This is after discussion both with your chair and with Labor Council. In prior budgets, the town administrator would meet with department heads and decide what to budget for their increases. And then perhaps he would direct departments to carry in their budgets X amount as a pay raise for certain union employees. The challenge with that is that you're putting it in the budget, and if you get someone on the town meeting floor that makes a motion to try to cut that amount, you're scrambling at the last minute to try to figure out where it is. In this case, although Evan will perhaps have a little less time than I've had with some of your employees, he will be the incoming TA, and it's not me settling what pay raises should be in the last 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks of my service to you. And finally, telling the unions what you plan to give them is not only not great bargaining policy, but it could conceivably be a unfair labor practice in that you have theoretically made up your mind before you've begun discussions. So after discussion with Labor Council, with your chair, we put a collective salary reserve into your unclassified. The trick with this will be that when you have it voted by the town meeting, you will need to do as we did in 2 other communities. You'll put a footnote adjacent to that line item. And then down at the bottom, there'll be a footnote that becomes part of the motion, which says contains a salary reserve for merit and equity and collective bargaining agreements transferable by the selectmen. That gives the selectmen the authority to move those dollars as granted to them by town meeting. The next major expense that we warned you about is the curbside municipal solid waste and the recycling collections. We are in active negotiations with BJ Harvey for a new 3-year contract. The collection side of the program is relatively inexpensive, probably about $15,000 increase. They're going up 2.5% per year is their proposal. Relatively, I think, reasonable. The last 3 contracts have been 3% a year for them. The only real wild card here is they have to follow the prevailing wage rates as set by the Commonwealth, but they're taking a little risk there in trimming it down to 2.5%. The large and your fee to Wheelabrator will go up about $2.10 a ton, roughly. The challenge, however, is that the tonnage on the municipal solid waste, the curbside refuse, is going up. How much of that is pandemic and the change in household practice, where somebody used to go out perhaps for dinner, they're now doing more takeout. That refuse used to go into the commercial dumpster at the restaurant. Now that refuse goes into the house. It has a modest improvement on the waste stream, but it does not cover the increased costs. The real money in here, at the end of the day, is on the recycling side of the house. You entered the contract with Harvey 3 years ago, at which time recycling, if it was not making money, or what we refer to commonly as commodities, was at least breaking even. However, that's gone completely upside down. Today, the costs to process and then dispose of recycling, when you account for the cost to dispose of some, the modest income from others, the cost to process it, is running in the $80 plus or minus range. So for every ton of recycling, as opposed to putting it at Wheelabrator where it costs, let's say, $76 and change, I forget the exact number, it's costing you roughly $80 in change. Ms. DeFazio and I were authorized by the select board to commence those negotiations. I'm hopeful we can get them buttoned up fairly quickly to take that off of Evan's plate. But we have assumed for the moment that the increase in recycling materials that are being disposed of will continue to go up, and that the maximum rate that's been talked about of $90 a ton may in fact be the actual contract rate. So the select board voted not to increase pay-as-you-throw fees at this time. They want to see how the budget shook out, and conceivably that bullet has been dodged for this year. That is going to depend upon the continuing vetting of the math and the community's priorities, which may very much differ from my priorities in putting forth this budget. Your property liability and POL. What is POL? Public officials liability. That is when a select board takes a vote and they get sued, or the zoning board of appeals, many of these other kinds of actions from boards and committees. The next major increase is the school resource officer had been in the public schools budget, and it moved back to the police department budget. And so that's about $52,000. So we can talk about some of the other drivers. You're going to find them as you go through the budget starting tomorrow. But those are the major, what I would say, uncontrollable cost items. Can you control them? Sure, to some degree. If you can negotiate different health insurance packages with your collective unions under the Public Employee Committee that you entered into when you went into the GIC. I will say that I think the renewal rate of 3% is excellent. We had been fearful it might be more. The salary reserve, I've never believed in balancing budgets on the back of employees, and we'll talk about compensation in a few moments. Can you control the amount that's recycled and the like? Perhaps. The other two items, property liability, there's some other deductibles, but I leave those to Evan. Those are changes that I'm not comfortable making with about 8-10 days to go here. So
Carter, it's like you really can't wait to leave. You keep mentioning how much time you have left.
I just, I do have a Post-it on my monitor. 8
Yeah, I
days.
figured you did.
Actually, I think that would be a great business for something. If everyone remembers the Y2K and the countdown clocks, I think that there's probably a business out there that could customize countdown clocks for everyone for a given purpose, to graduation, to the marriage, whatever. So what are what I would call the major new initiatives, or where's the new money in the budget?
Hold on one second, Carter. Barry, you have a question?
Gopal Shanoy has a question.
Go ahead, Gopal.
Is it
Yeah.
on the last slide?
This is more for my understanding. I was under the impression that the town pays for trash pickup, but the town gets reimbursed for the recyclables. Is that true or not?
So the contract provided that BJ Harvey picked up the municipal solid waste and hauled it to Wheelabrator. And we then paid the disposal fees at Wheelabrator.
Okay.
It picked up all of the recycling. And if there was a revenue to be made, it flowed to BJ Harvey. And for a number of years, that worked fine. They didn't charge you to process the recyclables whatsoever because they were covering their costs of processing, and in some cases making a profit over that. So if the tonnage cost $70 aggregated across all the commodities, cost you $70 to process, they were selling all the products aggregated for $80 a ton and making $10 a ton. However, 3 years ago, China made a decision as the major purchaser of recycling material to require a much higher degree of purity in the bales that were shipped to them. And most municipal processors can simply not hit those purity levels. That plus just vagaries in the market have caused what had been a break even, and in some cases a modest revenue item, into a major cost item. And this simply, you had a great ride for the last 3 years, but that has come to an end. Harvey's is unwilling to continue to collect and process the waste unless if it goes out of pocket, we cover those costs. Does that?
Carter, before you,
It was
Go ahead,
never a
Gopal.
revenue stream for the town. That's what you're saying.
It was never a revenue stream for the town, but neither was it a cost
Yeah.
stream for the town. Now it's gone to being never a revenue stream for the town, but potentially, and for real, at least in the near term, a cost center for the town.
Carter, before you go on, if anybody has a question, on the bottom of your screens, you can use the raise your hand function. That way you'll move to the top and I'll be able to see you and call on you. Just doing this isn't going to help anything because I can't see everybody. So please use the raise your hand function and then we can identify you and interrupt Carter. Go ahead, Carter.
So are there any other questions on that item? Hopefully that helped. And I know there will be substantial discussion over the solid
Thank
waste.
you, Carter.
I think, William, we have the 2 packets that we sent the select board that were a lengthy discussion on this, and I think we should probably distribute those to the finance committee and make sure that Evan and Mary see those as well. So moving back to the major initiatives, if you will. You have been paying the last couple of years your unemployment compensation. Can we get that slide back to full size? Perhaps I'm struggling to see it, I'm afraid. No, the last one. This one, yep. No, the next one, please. Yes, can that go back to full screen size? Or is that me at my end?
That's you at your end.
Okay, very good.
Still full screen.
My apologies. And leave buyback, you have a provision in your personnel plan that if people provide you 6 months notice of their retirement, you will buy back certain amounts of their sick leave. The first item here is to move that back into the general fund budget. It has always been holy gospel to me that recurring expenses must be paid for with recurring revenues. Moving an item that's going to happen every single year out to free cash is simply not sustainable in the long run. And so some of our priority here has been to reverse that. That may not be keeping with policy overall at the end of the day, because it does mean there are fewer dollars for services. I've always been of the financial policy best practice has to drive everything first, and then services are what you do with what is left, and that may not at all be welcome in many quarters. The next item is, you may recall that last year you cut the budget, or the budget was cut, I should say, by approximately $75,000 for your annual tree trimming program, keeping up with dead trees, fallen trees, and the like in the rights of way. And we have put $75,000 back into the operating budget instead of using free cash. There's another reason for using this approach to building the budget that I'll get to in a moment. Next, I found the size of the town's reserve fund. I know you don't use it often. That has been your good fortune. However, you are entering, will continue to be in difficult territory with COVID for we know not how long, to be supported by we know not how many outside dollars, if any, in the school district, the town. May find themselves challenged, and I have increased your request for a reserve fund from $75,000 to $150,000. The next investment I would, and again, I'll speak to why I've done things the way I've done it in a moment. The next is you are opening up a 23,000 square foot library, newer systems, newer surfaces. You want to keep that in good shape. And I'm not sure that your custodial staff of 2.5 people in the municipal center that has to keep up with other buildings can do that. And I think that it's important to protect that investment. And so we've added $50,000 for a full-time custodian for the library. Again, that's a cut that could be made if the vetting of the numbers or your priorities change. In the fire department, you've invested in a fire prevention officer. You have invested in a fire training, health and safety officer. You've made a great emphasis in the fire study committee's recommendations on vehicle maintenance, maintenance of apparatus, maintenance of personnel gear, SCBAs and the like. And we think that the current software programs that you have, which actually don't even touch many of these items, are woefully inadequate to the task. They're simply not fit for purpose. And so we have put together two numbers. The first is a baseline amount of software using the IMC manuals, which is the same modules, IMC modules, my apologies, which is the same software as your police department uses. So we'd be keeping the master and then using a program called PMAM, which tracks all the training, the circulation of policies. Everything is tracked when the firefighters sign for it at their email. Those records are all kept. So there's around $27,500 we think at a minimum needs to be made. That is not annual maintenance fees. That will drop considerably. But in year one, when you have to buy, deploy, and train staff on the modules, and we believe there's other modules that are going to be needed yet to be identified because your fire prevention officer doesn't start till Tuesday. We're currently advertising for the fire training, health, and safety officer, and you'll have your new chief coming along. But we think that's an important investment in the fire department. Next, we believe strongly that it is worth investing in a professional recruiter when you go to find your new chief. The town made that decision with respect to recruiting its incoming town administrator. I believe that the process of hiring your new strong chief, putting together that profile and challenge statement, trying to find the best chief out there that you can. I know 130,000 will sound like a lot to many, many people for salary. Frankly, it's not as high as you would think it is when you start doing all the comparisons. And we just think that having a professional whose only interest is in making sure their reputation is enhanced by the quality of candidates they find you and they put through the process with you is worth the effort and the dollars. On your legal side, several of your law firms are going to be increasing their rates. They have not done it for a number of years. I think that this is probably going to be the year at which they do it. Their labor councils below 200. I think they're at 195. Mark, I'm not sure what you're paying. My most recent tab in two other communities was about 225 an hour.
I'm paying 190.
Yep. But your labor council is excellent, is going to go up. And you do have 2 collective bargaining agreements this year. In addition, you have litigation over your DPW and some other projects. We simply think that that's going to go up. And finally, there's about $20,000 being invested, which is paid for to a large degree by the Affordable Housing Trust to pursue the select board goals on green communities, affordable housing, energy, and the like. So those are the major new expenses that are contained in the budget, in addition to those drivers that we indicated to you. And moving on, unless there's any questions on that page. So let's talk about our confidence level in the budget. The document I'm going to send you is going to tell you that you have my deepest apologies, but that I have a relatively low level of confidence in the numbers. There were problems in the Excel spreadsheet that we found as we were going through it. We basically walked you through the staff availability, which has been pretty nil. So Mary will continue to vet those numbers. And the reason that we set up the budget to some degree in the manner we did was not simply because we think items that you've been paying for with free cash every year should go back into the budget, but also the order is relatively soft. So if you decide you want to spend $100,000 more on recreation, simply leave the unemployment compensation and the accumulated leave buyback out of the operating budget. So we've tried to do this sort of in reverse. The other thing that you might find when you're all done is that if you cut out some of those items, but don't spend more money, For instance, let's say that you don't put the tree money back in the budget, as I've suggested, and you don't increase other expenditures, you can roll back that override drawdown, which will allow the lifespan of the drawdown perhaps to return back to that 5-year level that you had originally hoped for. Moving on, we have some concerns and some cautions every year we want to raise with you. We indicated to you, but simply never had the time or resources to clearly separate and identify the sewer enterprise funds. It is my firm belief, and I've recommended to Mary, and I'll be recommending this to Evan in the transition memo, that they perhaps make that as a high priority, go through that budget, and absolutely, that is a sewer enterprise fund be taken out, put in a separate standalone warrant article and fully recover all those costs in a clear pattern. We think it's much more transparent. We think it drives a much greater calculation and sensitivity towards what is a true sewer cost. And we believe it'll perhaps open up some room in the budget. The next concern that I have is, at the end of the day, you have the same 2 staff people in Grafton for your $70 million budget as I've had in 2 towns with $20 million budgets. Ms. Patel and Ms. Abdi did a great job at keeping things afloat and doing good work for you. But I think there's more that yet needs to be done. And the HR position alone, basically the HR analyst was, at the end of the day, a payroll clerk, and you had no backup trained for that payroll clerk. When they quit, we had to scramble to find a part-timer who would step in and tackle this for us. We've had an initial conversation. The school superintendent, I thank him for his creativity. We had an initial conversation. Ms. Gloria's circling back on all the tasks, and I hope that that can proceed on developing a consolidated payroll processing system that would still leave HR functions that the town would need to deal with, but no organization that I know of. And some might fault, the way we reorganized the assistant town administrator. I still think it was the right thing to do, but we have left yet this unanswered question of exactly how we're going to deal with some of these HR functions. Next, you have been moving over time some of your recurring costs to non-recurring revenues. We've already talked about tree trimming, unemployment insurance, and the accumulated leave buyouts. But you actually entered into leases to be paid for with free cash. And you'll see that when we get to the capital program. And again, it's always been the holy gospel to me since entering this business that recurring expenses have to be paid for with recurring revenues. I do believe that the finance team and the incoming town administrator should work with the finance committee to flesh out new omnibus financial management policies that would reflect best practices. And one of those best practices is to develop a formal plan to address your OPEB liability. And it doesn't have to be fancy. I was describing to Mark earlier today, in one community, we have a formula. When free cash is certified, X goes to this, Y goes to that, this percentage goes to OPEB. And in about 10 years, when your Worcester Regional Retirement System liability is fully paid, the assessment is going to drop, probably somewhere on the order of 30%. So that community has committed to, let's say that at that point in time, your assessment's $3 million and it drops to, let me just use $2.7 million. The plan in that community is that they will continue to budget the $3 million. And the 300,000, the delta between what they had budgeted in the year before the drop and what their assessment is in the year of the drop, will start to go into OPEB. Will it cover all your liabilities quickly? No. but it's my opinion that DOR, bond rating agencies, the auditor, everybody likes to see you doing something in recognition of this. Even if all you do is put $50,000 into your sewer budget, and you take that $50,000 every year to start to offset the sewer liability for OPEB. But I think that a plan does need to be thought about. The next thing that we want to bring to your attention is, it's our opinion that you should either through community compact, town funds, however you want to get this done, to undertake formal compensation studies on a regular basis. One community, I believe it's Shrewsbury, every couple of years, 3 years, I forget their cycle, they do all the union personnel. In the other cycle, perhaps 3 years later, please don't hold me to the exact number, they do the non-union and the department heads. It was challenging attempting to fill your town accountant, finance director position at the salary that was in the budget. I think you've gotten a great hire, but we moved the price. We have had 2 people turn us down recently for a position because the scheduled salary they thought was insufficient. So if you're able to get onto a cycle where, let's say next year you have 2 unions coming up, you did your union study, and 3 years later you did your union, a non-union and department head, and then every 6 years you would be doing these compensation studies. But I can tell you that with very limited exception, and by that I mean perhaps 3 people on the general fund side of the house, perhaps 4, you are falling behind the competitive curve, and you will have difficulty attracting and retaining personnel on the general fund side of the house. I am not familiar with the school fund side of the house, but I think that anyone who had a chance to watch, and if they didn't, should really watch that benchmarking study from the Grafton Sustainability Committee last night. And I don't think I could have ever set up a better 1-2. They do their presentation, and then I bring this comment to you tonight. Finally, I think that you really should look at a comprehensive management of all physical plant. The police chief is policing. The librarian should be doing library tasks. Fire should be doing fire. Breaking up the responsibility for the different buildings, not having a single entity. Now, you can still deal with the budget separately if you want. You can put all the budgets into a buildings and grounds department. There's all kinds of structures out there as to how this is done. But I do believe that having consolidated management of all your physical plant would be a great step forward for you. So unless there's any questions on that particular set of concerns and cautions, I'll move on.
Please do.
Okay. Okay, again, I'm struggling here because I've got to make this. Bear with me one moment. This is going to look different than what you are used to for a couple of different reasons. So the first is that after all the revenue projections had been done, I missed something, and we all missed something, which is in your community, school choice is reserved for use by the school district. We had included it as general revenues. The second is that overlay you put down as an unappropriated item. It is unappropriated, but at the end of the day, you have to balance your budget to it. It has to be in here. Blackstone Valley was put down separately. But again, you have to appropriate it. You have to show it. Then the sewer revenues we put back in because we had not been able to rip the budget apart and put it forth as a enterprise fund as we had hoped. So we've done it this way to do our best job to project everything. And at the end of the day, the budget is balanced if all of the numbers vet out and if the priorities that I've laid out in this budget comport to the community's priorities, and they may not. You know, I'm been here for 6 months with you. I've tried to honor what the select board I thought was the sense of direction. I've tried to restore what I thought was best practice. You know, but it's your community, and the finance committee working with the incoming TA and the finance director will make those decisions along with the select board as it works its way toward town meeting.
Carter, can I ask a question?
Please.
The education budget of the 3.65, is that the number that the schools and the school committee, the finance committee and the select board talked about at that
It
joint
is.
meeting?
It is, and Ms. Patel was with us earlier, and I think she can confirm that.
Okay, and so based on all of that and everything you've done here in the budget, how much of the override are you drawing down in your estimates?
We're still drawing down that expanded amount coming out of the TRICOM meeting. If you don't fund
Okay.
the tree budget and the unemployment compensation within the budget, and let's say you say, okay, Carter, you know, you might be right, but we're going to still pay for that with free cash because we have enough free cash. Option number one could be to roll back the amount of override that you use, Mark, and thus preserve those dollars so that it lasts longer the way you originally hoped.
It is an opportunity.
Possibly. So moving down to below, these are the non-appropriated items. The road budget, $1,500,000, I think perhaps that's 8 years ago now. That has not been increased once.
Carter, hold on 1 second. Gopal
Yes,
has a
I'm sorry.
question.
Apologies.
Yep, go ahead, Gopal.
Carter, so it's $286,000 that in the TRICOM committee meeting that we had for the school. So that is what is getting drawn from the override, is that right?
Plus the original estimate, yes. But you may have an opportunity here to roll that number back because of the way I've recommended some budget changes.
Oh, I see. So 286 was what we were short with, so we had to take that extra from the override.
Correct. And let's say that you say, okay, Carter, you know, we've been paying for the trees out of free cash now for a year or 2 years. And we understand what you're saying, but we're comfortable doing that. So we're going to cut that out of the budget. That's $75,000. Well, you know, rather than just spending on something else, you could roll back the amount of the override that you're going to use. Let's say that you don't like the idea of the fire recruiter. If that's cut out, you can roll the override back. You know, so you've got some potential here if all these numbers vet out on a continuing basis to possibly roll the override draw down. And what happens then is that you now have more dollars left for the remaining 3 years of the override. I know your original.
But Carter, the point, and Irene, I'll get to you in a quick second. But Carter, the point that you made earlier about recurring revenues using recurring dollars, those are recurring costs every year, and we need to start weaning off of free cash and stop putting stuff back in the budget. So the select board and the finance committee are going to have to talk and come up with a policy decision. And I agree with your point about upgrading our financial policies. We're going to have to decide how we want to manage this town. Pulling things out of the budget and using free cash as we've done in previous years was a poor decision. We're paying for it now, and I like the fact that you're putting things back into the budget and using recurring revenues to fund those. So I think we need to have a conversation with Evan, the select board, the finance committee, and have a strict policy on how we're going to fund those in the future. So thank you. Irene, you had a question?
Yeah, I didn't mute myself. Yes. I was just looking at the dollar change column, FY21 to FY22. And I assume that he's looking at the FY21 budget versus the department request versus the town administrator's suggestion. And even then, I'm still finding an error of 40,000.
Okay. And we'll continue to go through that. We had found a mistake even this morning. We made a change and yet it didn't roll up. And that's why I've tried to convey the relatively low level of confidence that we have. But I know that you've got Mary there now. She was a godsend to me the last couple of days. She's only been with us 8 days. So there will be some vetting through this before you get into it in great detail.
Okay.
Peter has a question.
And let me just say that wherever somebody sees something, please send it along. Send it to Evan and to Mary. Send it to Mary. I think that they would very much appreciate taking the shortcut to finding if there's an error somewhere.
Okay.
Peter Carlson.
Yes, thank you. I just want to remind the Finance Committee and Mr. Haddad and the Select Board that if you recall back in the summertime, we were starting to review some of the town's fiscal policies. I agree. I do believe that this is something that we need to bring back and have a joint meeting between Finance Committee and Select Board to bring this back up. I figure after Evan gets started, that Mark, between you and myself, we can figure out a date and time to
Agreed.
bring those back to the forefront.
I agree with you 100%, Peter. I agree. Barry, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, you were asking me to follow who had their hand up, and I saw a hand up.
Oh,
I'll go back
thank
to
you.
sleep now.
Thank you, Barry. Evan, you had a question?
No, I just wanted to make a comment. Mary and I just finished doing a 80-page financial policy update for the town of Munson that follows quite along quite well with what you're discussing now. So we'll be bringing that along with us as maybe a jump off point to try to, we worked with DLS on that whole process. So that might give us a good leg up to revamp some of those policies in pretty short order.
Excellent. Thank you, Evan. Appreciate it. Carter.
So in the non-appropriation items, if you will, remember the 1.5 million for the road stabilization fund. Once that has its initial adoption at town meeting, as we dealt with the 800,000 at the fall town meeting, that then becomes the province of the select board. It is my belief that you need to take advantage of the 2.5% every year. And that is my recommendation here, that you increase that, particularly now that the board, in addition to road work, bridge work, really would like to see a push on sidewalks. So there's an added cost for your road infrastructure. Do remember that if there is ever a year in which you cut the 1.5 million, let's say to 1.4 million, that's your new base. You can't just go back to 1.5. We had that discussion at some length last fall in terms of the capital stabilization. You have the capital stabilization at 800,000. That's a great starting point. I've suggested the 2.5% on that as well. And I think that if you can grow that fund to the point where you can no longer do leases, have to do leases, unless you can do leases at a substantially lower interest rate than what you can invest the stabilization fund. All deposits should be made into the stabilization fund, then use some amount of free cash and withdrawals from the stabilization fund, and avoid leases at any cost if you can possibly do it.
Barry, you have a question for Carter?
Yeah, I did. I noticed the sewer receipts applied is $1,099,000. I thought the sewer department brought in about 3 million.
This is one of the reasons that we very much dislike this template in the way it's presented. You carry, and some of this just became too difficult to do at the very end, Barry. I really wish we could have just torn this sewer cost out of the budget completely. You carry some of your sewer receipts in your transfer line item. So they're blended in a manner that I don't think is transparent. I don't think it's good accounting. I don't think it allows the general fund to recapture all the costs of the sewer fund. So our proposal is either this year as a high priority or next year You go through this budget, every penny related to sewer comes out of this budget. Every penny of revenue comes out of this budget. And in the sewer budget, you budget the health insurance. Don't budget in the general fund and then try to transfer it back in. Don't budget the debt in the general fund and then have a transfer back in. Put all those costs in your enterprise fund, your Medicare, your health insurance, your retirement assessment, your debt.
So
Make-
Carter, does that mean that we weren't properly accounting for an enterprise fund? By doing, is that allowed? Because I've been doing this for 36 years and I should have caught this earlier. I've never seen sewer enterprises or water enterprises or cable enterprises or whatever enterprise fund you set up, not being 100% self-sufficient and budgeted separately at town meeting. Why did we do it as transfers? Was there any written history as to why that was done that way?
Not that I'm aware of, and I don't want to second guess prior judgments, but I will tell you that I believe Ms. Gloria, I know Ms. Patel, Ms. Perkins, I know you, Mr. Chairman, and I don't know Mr. Broussard's view on this. I haven't had a chance to discuss it with him. All believe that having a freestanding warrant article for sewer that contains all sewer costs
100%, Carter.
and contains
100%.
all sewer revenues is a much cleaner, more transparent method of accounting for these dollars. Now that doesn't mean that you can't show the costs in an omnibus presentation. It simply means that you make them freestanding warrant articles and they aren't blended in with the budget for the general fund. You can put them on separate lines as you have with your capital and your roads, but I believe this is extremely important to be done at your first opportunity.
So Carter, is there a potential, once Mary and Evan dig into the sewer enterprise, figure out the exact cost, take it totally out of the general fund budget? Is there a chance that there might be more available revenue or more available budget space on the municipal side once that's done?
My very quick look-see is that I have some degree of confidence that you are correct. I wouldn't want to say I have the highest level of confidence, and I wouldn't want to try to estimate what that is. But I believe that when all indirect costs are recovered, if you're collecting $50 million and $1 million of that is sewer, well, you can charge 2% of the treasurer collector's office, 2% of the accounting, 2% of the, I think that when you go through a good, true cost accounting, Mr. Chairman, you are going to find you are correct.
Yeah, because I'm gonna assume there's health insurance costs, pension costs that aren't being accounted for, being charged to the sewer enterprise that the general fund is picking up right now. So Evan, I think the first thing you and Mary got to attack in the budget is get all those sewer costs out and accounted for.
They do carry some indirect costs, 215, but frankly, the health insurance is not an indirect cost. That's a direct cost.
Of course.
Pension, indirect costs are those service centers, accounting, treasurer collector's office, that are providing you support services as if you were buying them from an independent contractor. So I do have some level of confidence that you are correct. I just wouldn't want to say it's a high level of confidence, and I wouldn't want to try to put a number on it.
No, I agree. But I think Evan and Mary have heard us and they know where to look. Thank you,
And
Carter. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's going to be, cost, priorities for them because they've got many other things to do. And if they can get this done first without it taking too much time, I really do think it's going to help clarify the budget picture dramatically.
Agreed.
So
Barry, did you have a question?
Yeah. A different slant on this. Let's say I play with the sewer and I say they make 3 million each year. And I add that as part of the town's total budget from 60 million to 63 million. Then when I say, okay, I need to increase X by 5%, or the whole town budget by 5%, I actually end up with extra vigorish. Sorry, I came from another state. I'm not going to use 5% of the 3 million for the sewer. I can apply it in almost any other department.
If you are accounting for it correctly to the auditors,
Aha,
they're going to take the revenues that you received for sewer, and they're going to take all of the expenses that you charged for sewer, and that delta is retained earnings that remains the property of the sewer department.
yes, it should be.
It doesn't just get washed into free cash.
Okay,
So if you're doing it correctly, the answer is no, that should not happen.
okay.
So I think if we can move on to capital, please. I want to say, personally, I want to thank all the members of the capital committee. There is no way that the town administrator's office could have taken on the challenge this year. And frankly, I very much like the work that they did. When you get the full reports, you'll see every item was scored and how the weights that they applied, whether it was to expand services or was it to meet a lower maintenance costs, or was it a public safety need? And all the projects were scored in order. And then they applied the money down, and we just simply inserted a different column for capital rationing. And so when I say to you, here's my report, I have a high level of confidence in this. And what I do is I just put on a cover memo of why I might have differed a little bit. So the first three items are the ones that I have spent a lot of time harping on. These are recurring costs that the town has chosen to pay out of its stabilization fund, or actually free cash. When you keep moving recurring expense items to free cash, there comes a day, potentially, when you don't have free cash and yet you still have the expense. It's kind of the equivalent of somebody who has some overtime and decides to go buy a new house and to pay for the mortgage with overtime. Well, what happens when the overtime dries up and goes away? You still have the mortgage on the house. And that's the best example I can give. You have a couple years left. You have to finish the ride. So the capital program of roughly $1,275,000 does include these payments. The next is school, some handicap parking, some new cruisers. And William, something's not quite right there. We should have picked up 97,000. I'll have to fix that in the morning. The reason that I'd recommended 97.5 at the end of the day was to go to hybrid cruisers. The chief experimented with this for the first year, and they seem to have worked out well. Improving the South Grafton receiver to improve radio reception. A new engine to be paid for with a lease, a situation I think you need to work your way out of. Also having multiple major pieces of equipment on finance at the same time. So I think that the new chief, you got a great equipment report, and FPA's recommendations for how long these pieces of equipment can last, I think is a little draconian. But for instance, in one town, we had 5 pieces of equipment, and FPA said 20 years, we said 25, and every 5 years we replace 1 piece of equipment. You'll have to fine tune what works for you, but you can see you have a fire pumper tanker, an engine 3 lease, and now you're going to enter in a new lease. You have three pieces of equipment under lease at the same time. You need to break that cycle somehow, somewhere. Some new trucks for DPW. And again, we have Ms. Roy and Mr. Haddad when you go to review the capital budgets. We have a couple of school items. Master plan update. The cost actually is about $100,000. But I worked with Chris McGoldrick. I pointed out you couldn't actually do all the work in 1 year. And so he's broken it up into a couple of phases, which I think it'll make it much more palatable. Working our way down through.
Hold on one second. Barry, you have a direct question?
Oh, it's still up there. Well, actually, yeah. Does this actually add up to 1,275,000? It's
Well, I'm seeing perhaps an error in here, Barry, and we're gonna have to revisit this in the morning before we send everything out.
sorry. Okay.
We may have grabbed a bad screenshot. Again, my apologies. We'll double check that in the morning. Some DPW and some more school equipment. Now, there's two things that are very different here than perhaps what you've seen before. The language that you're going to get is for a capital program of $1,275,000, as I recall the number, as generally illustrated below. And so each of these items would have an account number, but overall it would be one single vote. And that way, if the fridge replacement at the schools is 68,000, but the restoring the loader is a little bit less, you can wash those numbers together. And we put a small contingency on there. And William, make sure I double check. I think we did grab a bad screenshot. My apologies. So I think that's really all that we can do on that. And I would encourage you to invite the chair of the capital committee, and a little bit of a work in progress, but overall, I think everyone was fairly pleased with the division of the workload, and each party respected their side of the line on this.
Carter, does that conclude your presentation?
William, I believe that's it, if I recall correctly.
It is.
It is. So you'll have all these documents tomorrow. I know this is not the norm, but in terms of the year and the staffing that we've had to work with, it's far from the norm.
All right, so at this point, I'd like to open it up to any questions from anybody for Carter. Any concerns, any comments? I know we're gonna get the final budget from him tomorrow, but Barry, go ahead.
School seemed to have a whole list of roof replacement needs. Is that still here?
Mark, you sat on the committee. Can you recall?
I'm gonna ask Colleen to answer that question because I do not know.
So the school's requests were a little different this year because at one point they were working with this company called Train to come in to help with some projects. So roofs, I don't remember off the top of my head making it high in the scoring list. And I don't know if that's because they were pulled out. I can't remember without looking deep in my notes, but I can tell you tomorrow. Does that work for you?
Yep.
Amy Marr is saying, yes, they were pulled out for that reason. So
Okay,
thank you, Colleen. Your memory is excellent.
I got it.
Go. Another question, Barry, go ahead.
My brain is actually functioning and now it's stopped. I remember when it was the Board of Selectmen, the chair was saying when the new high school was being discussed, I hope you guys are going to put money into maintaining the building and don't ever come back to us saying you need more money to maintain the buildings. Is the school actually putting in sufficient money to maintain the school buildings?
Somebody from the schools want to take that? Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, I'm not gonna take it, because
but I'm getting Jay and he will take it.
Okay.
He stepped away for a moment. But I think you could rephrase that question a different way, Barry. So first of all, I don't think a single one of us was on the board when that discussion happened. Maybe you were. So you're asking if we are putting money aside to maintain our building. I believe most of our maintenance comes from the capital budget,
Okay.
which is the town budget. It's not in our town. It's not in our school budget. So I guess the answer is no, and that should be a joint discussion on our backload of capital projects. So I did not need Jay. I could answer that question myself.
Jay, is there anything you want to add to that? No, okay.
That was great. Thanks, Laura.
Mr. Haddad, may I?
Please, of course.
I would like to distinguish between annual maintenance and life cycle. So you put a new HVAC system in, it needs a preventative maintenance contract every year. The school does it. Every year, no matter how tough it is, they maintain the equipment. They don't say, well, this is the year we're going to drop the preventative maintenance. But there's a life cycle to that equipment, whether it's 20 years or 25 years, no matter, I maintain my gas furnace, but at 22 years, that technology dies. It cannot be replaced no matter what. I'm staring down the replacement costs. So I think it's important whenever somebody says, well, I hope you maintain it. Well, we are, but we also have to, you probably maintain your car very well. You go in there every 5,000 miles, every 10,000 miles, you do all the right things. But at the end of 10 years, you have to go pay whoever your favorite car dealer is that new $40,000 or $45,000 or $50,000. It's important, I think, to distinguish between those two.
I drive Hyundais, not Cadillacs, Carter, so a little less than 40,000.
That's why 40 will buy your car, sir.
Any other questions for Carter on the budget? And anybody attending, if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand and we'll recognize you as well. Go ahead, Gopal.
Carter, means I didn't see anything from a department by department. Means I saw some groupings, which was not clear to me. What was kind of the differential between, if you add up everything that everybody asked to what the numbers you arrived at, how much was the differential?
Basically what we put on the chart, everybody else was pretty much level funded. You'll see when you go through it department by department.
Okay.
Other
than the custodian for the library.
Yeah, what I try to do is to really show you the money isn't in the pencils and the pens, or did we increase $3,000 to $3,500? What I try to do is put forth, if you're looking for money, here's the big nuggets. Here's where to look. Because you're just, yep, you can squeeze every other line item, 2%, 3%, 4%, but at the end of the day, it's meaningless. It's not going to add up. But if you decide that the budget, if it's when all the final numbers are vetted, it's a 100,000 in deficit. Simple. Go take that unemployment and accumulated leave, put it back in free cash. I would urge you to not just spend. One of the things that'll happen in communities is when they do find more money, they'll spend it on services. It's great. We need them. The school needs more money. The benchmarking report from last night shows you the town needs more money. But I think you've got to fix the basic structural issues and best practice as your highest priority first. And you have to make sure you have sufficient capacity in your planning and your finance offices to properly evaluate, collect, and account for everyone's dollars so they have faith that you are maintaining good books in accordance with best practice and that you're following best practice. And it can be painful, but I truly believe it's the right way to go.
I agree. Laura?
Thanks, Mark. I just wanted to clarify just what I said. So our ongoing maintenance, Barry, I'm not sure if that's what you meant, like electricity, plumbing, that's built in our budget. But bigger ticket items like roof replacement, boilers, that comes out of capital.
Okay.
So I don't know if I answered the first time what you were asking.
it just struck me that I recalled, I think it was David Ross was the chair, when he brought this issue, and this was before you, Dr. Cummings, when he brought up the issue about the new high school, are you going to maintain it, or are you going to come back and ask for another school real soon? So.
Right. Well, and it's same as the library, right? Is the library coming out of the budget? I mean, we'll replace our carpet in the building, but when we need a new roof, that has to come from a bigger budget.
Understood.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Thanks.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, just on that. I mean, that comment, to the extent it was made way before my time. But had I been there, I would have said something similar. Like, look, it's a snide comment to make. Of course, we're going to take care of the capital equipment, but let's all have reasonable expectations about what it means to have capital. You have yearly expenses for maintenance, and then eventually it's going to have to be replaced. And one of the things over the past decade that I found annoying and not helpful was when people would declare, well, we're all done with capital. We're done building. There's nothing left to build. Well, that's not true. Because the second you create something, the second you open the door, whatever structure you've built is deteriorating right before your very eyes. You don't see it, but eventually that's true and it needs to be replaced. So we have schools that need roofs replaced that we've been putting off for years because it's so expensive. But that lack of an organized capital plan ultimately, as we've noted before, costs you more money in the long run because you're not addressing these things in a timely fashion and they become more expensive to replace as time goes on. That's why you're spending $60 million to build a library when in 1996 it was $1 million, right? So that I always want to take the opportunity to remind the public about the deleterious financial impact of delaying not only capital maintenance, but capital replacement without an adequate plan.
And Ed, following up on that point, I think the fact that the town supported setting aside a portion of that override for capital that you can grow by 2.5% each year will give the town the opportunity, new town administrator in conjunction with our school superintendent, to stop planning with the capital planning committee as well, to stop planning these capital events so that we don't have those problems moving forward. So I think the town is moving in the right direction. I agree with you 100%, Ed. Anything else? Any other questions for Carter? Carter, I want to thank you tonight for putting that forward. I know you're under the gun, short-staffed and everything else, and I appreciate the effort for it. I think we have a good starting piece. And as I'm sure as we start digging into the numbers and have a different set of eyes looking at it, I think we'll have a good budget for town meeting moving forward. And I think the fact that the select board has set the town meeting for June gives Evan a little bit more time to crunch numbers with Mary and the finance committee, with the department heads and the finance team, looking at those issues and trying to figure out exactly what we need to bring forward to town meeting. And I think if we address the sewer issue, we start looking at the spreadsheets to make sure they add up and foot properly. I think we'll be in good shape, and I think we have the time to do it and to focus the right attention on it. Irene, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to get introductions from some of our new people. I'm sure they've been introduced at select board and school committee, but I think this is their first time before the finance committee.
Well, you know something? You're absolutely right. So with us tonight, we have Evan Broussard, who is going to be our new town administrator. I believe, Evan, you're starting on February 22nd?
That's correct. Yeah.
Not February 11th?
Not February 11th.
February 11th.
No, although seeing Mary on the call, so Mary and I have worked together for 5 years, and I'm missing Mary, so I'm looking forward to getting out there and doing our work together. So I'll be the new town administrator starting February 22nd. I'm very excited to get there and dig into all this. This is nice, and quite frankly, it was great to be part of this meeting and see all of you and your passion for municipal finance and the town of Grafton. So I'm really looking forward to it.
We're looking forward to working with you. And also here with us tonight, as mentioned, is Mary Laurie, who's our new finance director. She's been here since when, Mary? February 1st?
Yes, just a little over a week.
Have you solved all of our financial problems, Mary?
I'm starting.
You're starting, okay.
Mary, if you could untangle that sewer enterprise fund before I get there, that would be great.
I'm on it.
Look at that, Mary, your first direction from the new town administrator. So anything else? Anybody have any other questions? Carter, again, thank you very much. We thank you for your efforts. We've enjoyed working with you over these last several months. You've been very candid with the Finance Committee. You've attended all our meetings, and we really appreciate the time that you've given us and the effort that you put forward for the town. So thank you very, very much
It's
for
been a
everything you've done
pleasure
for us.
to work with you at all as well. I know that there have been times when I've not come bearing gifts of good tidings, especially last fall over the 800,000, but I think that you're in excellent hands with Mary Laura and Evan, and I know there's vetting to do on that budget, and I know there's priorities that need to be considered, but I wish you all well in the coming days. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of the members.
Yeah, Carter, I just wanted to mention, welcome to Evan. The good news is we are all good to work, nice to work with. The bad news is you have a tough act to follow. It is Carter. He has just set the bar so high. Yeah, thank you so much, Carter.
Very kind of you. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions or comments, I'd entertain a motion from the Finance Committee to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Barry,
Barry, aye.
Sue,
Sue, I.
Irene,
You're on mute.
Sorry, Irene, I.
Andy,
Andy, I.
Heather,
Heather, I.
Gopal,
Aye.
Dan,
Dan, I.
Eric,
Eric, I.
Mark, I. Thank you. And thanks to the select board and the school committee and the school superintendent and Carter and William for being here tonight and helping us get through this budget. We look forward to meeting with all the departments. We're going to continue with the Finance Committee regular meeting tonight. We have some things to cover. You're all welcome to stay and participate with us because we are a fun group. So thank you again to everybody. So moving on to our agenda, the next thing on the agenda is to review the assignments of the Finance Committee members to the departments. I know, Susan, you sent that out to everybody. Is everybody comfortable with their assignments? Do we need to talk about those or anything? No? Okay.
I am
That was-
trying to find mine, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I have one question, Mark.
Go ahead, Irene.
The question had been brought up as to whether or not Gopal should shadow me in talking with Beth Galloway at the library.
Yep.
There was a concern that that was a potential conflict of.
No, none whatsoever. Gopal's not making the final decision on the budget. Evan is and the selectmen in town meeting. So there's no conflict for Gopal to look at the library budget.
Okay, in that case, Gopal, I'll be sending you an email so you and I can coordinate our schedules. And after Sue does her introductory thing, we'll reach out and set up the meetings for the ones that you're going to shadow me on.
Okay, thank you.
I see, I'm going to skip something on the agenda here. I see Skip is here, no pun intended, Skip. And I guess we have a reserve fund transfer request, Susan, that we need to take up tonight.
We do have the information, but we don't have the actual form complete. So that's why on the worksheet, I wanted to leave it up to your discretion.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine with us approving a reserve fund transfer. Let Skip to explain it to us. And if the committee's comfortable with it, I'm comfortable with having the Finance Committee consider it without the form being filled out. We can do that after the fact. So Skip, you want to tell us what you need and why?
Yeah, sure. Well, what happened is the boiler that we replaced 12 years ago, which was the original one from 74, kind of met its end. It hadn't cost us anything. We put about $1,100 into it. Bernard didn't think it was going to do very well. Kind of hoped that it would last until the spring, and it did not. You know, been going over there every day just to make sure that it kind of limped along. And a couple of days after, a week after, they got it back up and running, it wasn't working again.
So we in danger of
So-
having pipes freeze?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were, you know, kind of lucky. It was getting into the 20s type of deal.
Yep.
I got a cost to repair what needed to be done with it. It was about a little over $7,500. I think you have the exact documents, and it was a little over $9,000 to get it replaced. With a much better generation of technology. I sat and talked to Carter about it, and he said it's kind of a no-brainer. that he would support getting this squared away. So we went ahead and had the furnace replaced. I had not checked in with Susan. Carter had indicated he was going to get in touch with you guys and let you know. So I didn't know if you had changed the way we had done the transfer request in the past, Mark.
No,
And
we
then
still
following
want to
up
follow the
with
same.
him
No, we wanna
over the
follow-
last couple of, say, week or so, found out that it was in fact not changed. And I got the paperwork down to him. I guess, I stopped and saw him with originals Thursday. And he was in the middle of trying to put the budget together and work with the spreadsheets and everything that really didn't have a user's manual, as I think he was trying to say to you tonight.
Yep.
And I guess he just hasn't got the
Yeah,
signed
I'm
ones
not
over.
concerned. I'm not concerned about the paperwork. The issue is we need to replace the furnace at $9,000. I think it makes sense to replace it. Go ahead, Sue.
I just wanted to ask Skip if there was water damage to the library.
No, there was none, Sue. There was danger of the pipes breaking.
Yeah.
Well, the furnace has already been replaced.
Oh, it has been replaced. Okay.
Oh,
good.
yeah. Oh, yeah. This Mark, this happened in December. I was over there for a couple of days with the guy working. It's kind of nice. I stopped working in April, so I've been doing a lot of other stuff, and it kind of let me babysit him, make sure it got squared away.
Okay, so we definitely need to, I think we have no choice. It was an emergency repair. That's what the Finance Committee Reserve Fund is for. So I would entertain a motion to approve a reserve fund transfer for the Nelson Park and Library for replacing the furnace in the amount of $9,000. Can I have a motion?
Okay, I'll make the motion that we approve $9,820.
Thank you.
Well, I'm just looking at the agenda that says 9,000, so I'm going to blame
But I've
Susan
got
for
the
that.
invoice open in front of me.
Thank you.
I second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by roll call, by saying aye. Barry? I can read lips. Barry said aye. Sue?
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
Irene?
Aye.
Heather?
Aye.
Gopal?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Mark? Aye. All right, so that's all set. Thanks, Skip. It's good to see you.
Sure. Hey, just a quick question for you guys. We never had this come up before. One of the reasons why I'd hoped to go to the Springtown meeting was to take some of the money that had been put into wages and move it over to help use to pay for this. If it limped until the spring, can we put money at the special town meeting back into the reserve fund?
If we needed to, town meeting is the appropriating authority. They can do whatever they want if we make the request, but so we've spent what? Is that the first 9,000 out of 75,000 we've spent this year?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I don't think we'll need to do it, Skip, but I appreciate the offer. If things get tight and we need to do it, we'll go to Evan and say, Evan, get an article on the warrant. We want the money back.
Yeah, and just to put it out to all the kids that are on the phone now, we originally this year thought that we were going to be funding the operation out of the trust fund.
Okay.
So I expect to have more information as various assorted and sundry town offices are open, but probably get shot by my compatriots in crime, but we might be able to do that this year.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Skip. I
We'll
appreciate it. Nice
to you
to
later.
see you. Nice
Thank
to
you.
see you. Sue, next on the agenda, we have a review of the snow and ice budget. Do you have numbers for us?
Yes, in your, on your worksheet, do you see your worksheet, Mark?
Yep.
So that gives us, as of 2/3, there was a balance of 31,734, which states that they have used 78.71%.
Okay, so I'm going to assume that we're probably going to go into deficit. So
Yeah.
I bet one of the first things that Evan is going to do is going to allow for deficit spending of snow and ice. I would assume you're going to allow that, Evan.
Sure thing.
Awesome. How's our budget looking, Sue?
We're going to need a finance transfer from the reserve fund at the end of the year through our normal practices, meaning the town side, that we usually put in a reserve fund transfer advisory so that everyone can plan for that. So it could be,
No, this is for your salaries, right?
yes, it is.
Yep.
So it will be basically possibly 50 hours. So it's a little over $1,000, could run a little higher, depending on, what's in store towards the end of the year.
So we can either do a reserve fund transfer, or we can ask the town administrator to consider a line item transfer into the finance committee wages. How are we doing expense wise? We haven't.
Expense wise, we're great, Mark.
So we might be able to transfer from expenses into salary. So we'll keep an eye on that as we get closer to town meeting.
Yes.
How's your new laptop?
The new laptop is in the works. I'm happy to say through the funding from the CARES Act. And I'll be picking it up on the 17th of February next week. So that's great. So I can't thank everyone enough for that. And the one thought that Mark and I, through Mark's permission, I had asked if we could add software for the conversion from PDF to Word and vice versa. That's one of the lacking things that is really needed for me for this position. So it is $244 a year. It's an annual fee. So if we can, either at this meeting or the next meeting, which would be March 6th, I'm assuming, would be a payment. Cindy's paying it through the credit card, the town credit card, as she's doing other software items. So we would need to approve it at one point. So.
Well, let's do that. Let's do that tonight. So we know it's a definite cost. So I'd entertain a motion to pay $244?
So what I would do, Mark, is I would put in the 100.
Yep.
I'm sorry, the 100 and change, because it ends the fiscal year. I don't think we can pay the full 244.
Because it goes into the next year. Okay, so what number do you want us to use?
$101.70.
Thank you.
All right, I'd entertain a motion for $101.70 to pay for the software.
I'll make a motion that we approve $101.70 to pay for the conversion software for the laptop.
Is there a second? All right, all those in favor by roll call, Barry,
Aye.
Sue,
Aye.
Andy.
Actually, I had a question.
Go ahead, Andy. I'm sorry. I should have said, is there any discussion? I apologize.
That's all right. A minor thing. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't like any savings buying the full year membership at one time versus monthly payments.
As what I understand, Andy, is through the town, through Cindy Ide, she pays it, Microsoft does it on a monthly basis. I don't know why, but that's how it is set up. I don't know if that's the most frugal way of doing it, but that was what was indicated to me.
Okay, thank you.
Andy?
Aye from me.
Irene?
Aye.
Heather?
Aye.
Gopal?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Mark? Aye. Before we get off that subject, Evan, one of the things that we're going to have to work with you on is our great assistant who's been with us for many years. And the only reason we still have her now is because of Zoom. But when Zoom ends, Sue has actually moved to New York. So we would like her to commute back, but she's refusing to do that. I don't know why. So we're going to need to go through a search to hire a new assistant. So we'll get in touch with you and work with you on that. And Sue and I came up with the job description. We want some overlap with Sue and the new person so that she can help train that person. And so we'll be reaching out to you on that in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Go ahead, Gopal.
Wouldn't it be easier just to stay on Zoom?
If the governor lifts,
to find a replacement for Sue is going to be very difficult.
I agree, but if the governor once the governor lifts that emergency order, we're going to have to go back to meeting in person unless he allows this to continue, which is fine with me if he does, but I doubt it. So we're going to have to replace Sue at some point. But I agree with you. I don't want to lose Sue. I'm very glad. That's the only good thing about the pandemic is we've been able to hold on to Sue for so long.
You guys, thank you.
It's true.
Yeah,
It's true.
agreed.
Andy, go ahead. You're muted, Andy.
Are we allowed to take a vote on that? Letting Sue just walk away?
Yeah, I wish we could deny her, her retirement, but I guess we can't. Before we go on to minutes and bills and things like that, with regards to our schedule moving forward, so our public hearing, our first public hearing is that Saturday, March 6th, rather, not May, March 6th. So once we get the budget tomorrow from Carter, start reaching out to your departments and start scheduling your meetings. You'll have 3 weeks to try to set things up. I would imagine phone calls and Zoom is going to have to be the way you're going to do it. Because, you know, town hall is still closed to the public. So we'll try to, if you need to use the town Zoom account, our Zoom account, the finance committee Zoom account for a meeting, Sue and I can work with you and set you up and allow that to happen. If you can do phone calls, that's great as well too. So just let me know what you need and we'll be ready to go on March 6th. Sue
Mark.
Robbins, did I see your hand up?
Yes, it's okay if we use our own Zoom?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So yeah, so start those meetings and we'll all plan on getting back on March 6th. Andy, you're gonna mirror me on a bunch of mine, right? Is that what we decided to do?
Yeah, I have I think 2 with you and 1 with Sue.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. So I'll start reaching out to the people and get those scheduled.
Gopal has one with me. I think it's fire, right, Gopal?
Yep,
So as soon
okay.
as I set up those appointments, I'll let you guys know. All right.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you.
Excuse me,
Next on
Mark.
the, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, Mark.
Go ahead.
I will send everything out to you tomorrow morning as to everyone who has confirmed. Actually, you have that in one of the files that I sent in the email, but I'm going to send out exactly what we're going to, what you see they have seen.
Perfect.
So you're going to have your name and I'm going to give an email address. Is that sufficient for them to contact you should you need to?
Perfect.
Yes.
That's great, Sue. Thank
Should
you
they
very,
need
very much.
to? Okay. So Mark, and one other thing before you move forward, there was a highlight as to how do you folks want to do what we talked about last year, which never really got done, was a report. Do you want a report that is a physical file, Word document from each representative?
No,
for
that,
the department?
given the time crunch and given the way we're gonna be doing it, they're probably not gonna be very detailed meetings. Let's wait until we have the department meetings. I don't want to put extra work on the members of the finance committee or you. So I think we can figure that out for next year. Go ahead, Sue.
I just as soon not do the reports because I have a feeling some of these numbers are going to change
Yes,
by the
I
time
agree
the
100%.
town meeting comes. So to me, it would be a waste of time.
Yep,
Very
I'm with
good.
you 100%.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. We have the minutes from the January 21st meeting. We've all received those and read them. Are there any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from January 21st.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? I remember to do it that time, Andy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Barry,
Aye.
Sue,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Irene,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
Gopal,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Eric.
Aye.
Mark, aye. Outstanding bills. We have a bill for legal notice publications. How much is that for, Sue?
We do not
you
yet.
don't,
I'm
okay.
sorry.
The conversion software, we took care of that already.
You did?
So next on the agenda is committee member topics. Sue, updates from CIPC and DPW.
The IPC will be working on next month to get a 5-year capital plan to Carter or Evan, whoever we get it to first. And so we're working on that and have it done. On the DPW, all I can tell you is we're in litigation, and that's all I can say.
Well, I'll tell you, I want to thank you and Colleen and everybody on the CIPC. Obviously, Carter was tickled pink that you guys were able to help him and get that report done. So thank you very much for all your efforts on that, Sue.
Oh, you're welcome. It was fun. We had a good time, and everyone was very cooperative of getting all the information to us in a timely manner because we had a time crunch to get it to him. So it
That's
worked
awesome.
out well.
That's awesome. Any update on the school? Well, I don't think there's no update on the schools. We had that joint meeting and
No, there isn't anything, except that he said last night at the school committee meeting that there's still so many unknowns because of COVID and what the school year start next year is he just doesn't know if he's going to have to carry some of those COVID expenses over
Okay.
into the fall. So that's the only thing he has some concerns about.
Okay. Barry and I, last night, we met with the select board. Barry did a ton of work putting together a PowerPoint presentation and getting all the numbers. And Ed and Angelina Correa last night did a phenomenal job, in my opinion, presenting the numbers to the select board. I thought it was a great presentation. It was well received by the select board. It sets forth the process for next steps in completing a final sustainability report. So, you know, we're a year behind, and it's only because of the pandemic. We weren't able to get the work done that we needed to get done. But now that we see now that we have the report done, the first report done and presented to the select board, we'll be moving on to the next steps. So I want to thank Ed. I want to thank Barry, Amy Marr, Angelina Correa, and everybody on the sustainability committee to get that report done and to the select board last night. I believe, Barry, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they're going to be posting it on the website.
That was the request, yes.
Yeah, so you'll have a chance to look at the benchmark report on the website, and there's a ton of information in there.
Yeah, there's a small correction. There was reference that the numbers were for FY18. No, they were all from FY20 from the
Okay.
Department of Revenue DLS.
Perfect. So that was a great job, Barry, and I was very happy for Ed last night because
Yes.
Ed's been working so hard on this, and this is something that he started 3 years ago. He was met with resistance. He kept fighting for it, and I think, you know, last night was a culmination of a lot of his hard work. That we're finally in a right path, and I think we're going to, you know, continue on with Ed. Hopefully, Select Board Member DeFazio asked him to continue on the committee. Hopefully, he will, and we'll keep going and get that done. So that's a report from the Sustainability Committee. Unless there's anything you want to add, Barry.
No, I was glad that we got this one done.
Yep,
Now
I
we get to
agree.
the hard stuff.
The hard stuff. Yeah. Irene, any update on library economic development?
Okay, EDC has not met since our last meeting, or before Christmas, actually. Our next meeting is this coming Monday, the 15th.
Perfect. What about library?
Don't have much to say. Library is cruising along. We meet every month.
Beautiful building. It looks like it's really coming along nice.
Oh, yeah, and everything in terms of, despite all the hiccups at the beginning, everything else, the stuff that really, I don't want to say matters, but the things that we see are going great. Colors have matched. They got the building, you know, buttoned up and tight before the worst of the weather. That was a big concern. And despite everything, we are still on schedule for our originally planned substantial completion date. Now we are going to have a couple of extra months at the temporary location, but we are still within the budget. I say budget within the amount we're allowed to borrow.
Nice. Great
So,
job.
yeah. And that's with doing some of the quote ads, you know, the things that you hold off on until you see if you've got the money. So, and there should not, again, nothing is ever in stone, but those parts of the project most likely to bring up the big surprises tend to be things happening in the ground.
Of course.
When you're building, once you've got walls up and a roof on, you don't end up with big surprises so much.
I
So
agree.
really should not be any other, you know, huge hiccups.
Excellent. No update on the select board
Actually,
with
it looks like
regards.
Barry has a question.
Oh, go ahead, Barry. Sorry.
What's the target opening date?
The target substantial completion date is sometime in June. I want to say June 8th. I'm not sure about the open to the public date. I'll have to get back to you at our next meeting.
Okay.
Sorry, Barry, I didn't look up. As far as the financial policy subcommittee update, Evan, you heard tonight, we really need to really dig deep into our financial policies. I'm the representative from the finance committee, and I'll be working hopefully with Matt Often from the select board and you to try to get through these and then have a joint meeting of the FinCom and the select board to go through them. Our financial policies really need to be updated. So I'm glad you're going to be bringing something on board for us to take a look at that you worked with the DLS. When we did ours in Groton, we worked with the DLS very closely. We came up with a really good set of policies. So I look forward to working with you and getting this stuff done.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mary and I, we come as a team package on that. So we'll,
Yeah, I was going to ask you and Mary, are we allowed as residents of Grafton to even drive through Monson now?
I would
or
not.
We're
I would not.
Okay.
No.
I had a feeling we were going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
I was going to ask that. How long is it going to take them to forgive us?
Well, the chief's going to retire in another 8-9 years, so I would wait it out.
Okay, that's what we'll do then. Sue, go ahead.
We had sent some policies, our debt policy and finance policies to the select board, and they still have not reviewed those.
Yep.
And have
So that'll be
not
part of the
signed-
overall review that we'll do
Okay,
soon.
good, because those were supposed to be reviewed every 5 years, and we added up the OPED into that policy, so that will probably have to have an addendum to it to kind of say how we're going to fund that, because it's not stated in there, so.
I like what Carter presented tonight. What we did in Groton is we fund each year enough out of free cash into the OPEB trust to keep the net liability from growing, so that we keep our liability where it is each year. And then our plan is to take the money once our unfunded pension liability is paid off and use that to pay our ARC moving forward. And I think that's a good idea that Carter presented tonight. And I think that's something, Evan, that we can talk about moving. I think it's a way to do it. I think it's the best way to do it, Sue.
I have
Yeah,
to
I
say
have seen
that I'm
two districts that I've worked in.
I have to say, Mark, that I'm absolutely thrilled that Carter is taking the sewer enterprise and putting it into warrant articles, because that has been discussed several times over the years I've been on finance committee, and it's never been done, because it is going to be a lot more transparent. And I'm hoping that we find a few more dollars after it's done, but
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I'm surprised that our auditors have not called that out when they've done our financial review, because enterprise is supposed to be self-sufficient.
Right.
Having it in the general fund, and the reason that it was kept in the general fund is to steal money from the enterprise to offset budget deficits. Well, that's not what an enterprise fund is. If you don't want it to be an enterprise, have it as a department budget and then have all the revenues go into the general fund. If it's going to be an enterprise, it has to be 100%. So health insurance, pension, costs for Evan, costs for Mary, costs for the treasurer, everybody can be assigned to that department. I know there's $215,000 that Carter mentioned, I think he said in direct costs, but I guarantee you there's more fund in the general fund, more money in the general fund being spent on sewer that should be assigned to that enterprise. It'll free up money in the general fund. So Mary, it's going to be a yeoman's task going through that, but it definitely needs to be done. I'm with you 100%, Sue. We never should have allowed that to happen. We should have really pushed back hard on that.
Putting some things back into the operating budget where they really belong, instead of taking them out and using free cash for them. I was also very happy to hear that tonight as well. So I was pleased with his presentation and all of his ideas.
I agree, Sue. And Evan, I think Carter set the stage for you to really, a good framework for you to build on. And I think the budget format that's been used in the past should be scrapped.
Yeah.
I understand it's award winning, but I don't think it works. I don't know why it won an award. I would bring whatever you want to do and start from zero and build your own budget. And that way it's yours, your fingers on it, and then hopefully any discrepancies and anything will be cleared up. I think you're gonna have to start from scratch and build up. That would be my recommendation to you.
Okay, thank you.
And then the final thing is the town administrator screening committee. I think you see the evidence of Heather's and my hard work right here in front of you tonight. Would you agree with that, Heather? Yes, Heather agrees with that.
Absolutely.
I think
That
we
was
just
great.
need to
We had very good interviews, and I'm very
Yeah.
excited, Evan. Very, very excited.
Oh,
Yeah, we got very lucky that Monson sent their A team over to Grafton. So
Agreed. Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to take credit for Mary.
you can take credit for Mary. Heather and I will take credit for Evan. Welcome aboard, Evan. Welcome aboard, Mary. And William, I'm sorry, I've been sort of ignoring you tonight. Welcome aboard, William. Irene, I should have introduced him when you asked. Our
I was
new
gonna
management
bring that up
analyst.
before the meeting ended.
Yep. So there, so William, welcome aboard. We look forward to working with you too.
Thank you.
Go
It's a
ahead.
pleasure to be here. I am not from Munson, so I am not a part of the reason why you can't go there anymore.
Okay, that's good. Barry, did you have something?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Mary Luria. Mary, Finance Committee has requested in the past to get a copy of the Management Revenue and Expenditure Report. It comes out monthly. And my understanding is accounting compiles that report using SoftWrite and sends it to the department heads and they review, etc. So the request is that when you're generating that report and sending it to the department heads, that you just add, what is it, fincom@grafton.gov, something like that. One email, it goes to all of us.
Okay, yeah, I can certainly make that happen and include you in the email as well.
There's this one oddity about it. It says it's Management Revenue and Expenditure Report, and yet where I would expect to see revenue showing up, it usually doesn't. So maybe that's just me. It's a PDF. I like Excel, but a PDF is just perfect.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Barry. Go ahead, Sue.
I just wanted to ask Evan and Mary if they like the SoftWrite. Because I'm not thrilled.
I'm looking at Mary's face, and I'm going to guess Mary's going to be asking Evan for new software.
Yeah, because I don't like SoftWrite. We had talked about that before Tim came, about getting some new software. And of course, what we wanted was very expensive, and we wanted to see if we couldn't just, pay for it over 3 years, but they nixed it and went with SoftWrite. So I'm not thrilled with it and how it is set up. So, but there was a lot of problems when it first came on too. So.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, Mary.
I don't like it at all. I don't like the account structure.
Right.
I don't like how all the state and federal, town and school grants are all lumped into one fund. So you'll either have to overhaul the SoftWrite with UMass, because we do not follow in Grafton, they do not follow the UMass accounting structure. So you'll either have to update SoftWrite, or you'll have to go with new software and do a whole overhaul.
Was that something, Mary, that you would look at doing? Obviously, you can't do it mid-fiscal year. Is that something you would look at doing next year if possible?
Yeah, I've already started inquiring about it. Previously I worked with Vadar, and I do like Vadar. So I will be reaching out to the owner to get an estimate on the cost of doing that.
And that would include the new software and any conversion that you have to do, and keeping our old records and all that sort of fun stuff. I agree. I've used Vadar. I've used, of course, I can't think of the other one. I've never heard of software. Munis, and then there's something that we use in Groton that's pretty good that our accountant likes. Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah, that's also a Tyler product they used in Maynard.
It's good stuff. So I would welcome a proposal to the Finance Committee would support, at least me as a member of the Finance Committee would support an expenditure, and I think Sue would too, on a new software package if we can afford it.
I have just one last question, Mark.
Please go ahead.
To you. Did Carter reach out to Representative Meridian and State Senator to see if our charter change legislators has been done?
That was on my list of things to do, and I dropped the ball. I will follow up with Carter tomorrow, I promise.
It would.
I have an email on that, but since I wasn't in the loop, it's a little out of context, but I do know that they received something back from Meridian on that.
Oh, okay. So I'll check in with Carter tomorrow, Sue. Evan, what we did at the town meeting is the Finance Committee used to get appointed by the moderator, and we amended the charter to have a tri-committee made up of a member of the Finance Committee, the moderator, and the town clerk will now be appointing members of the Finance Committee moving forward. So that'll happen with the reappointments coming up this spring, hopefully, if the legislation passes. So that'll be interesting. So we'll have to check on that. Thank you, Sue. I'm sorry, I dropped the ball on that. I apologize.
No problem.
Is there anything else? This was a good meeting tonight. Sue, go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. Would we have a general consensus or a vote of the committee to allow me to sign the reserve fund transfer? I'm going in on Wednesday, the 17th.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call,
Aye.
Barry,
Aye.
Sue,
Aye.
Andy,
Aye.
Irene,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
Gopal,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Eric.
Aye.
Mark, aye. That's one reason why I don't like Zoom. We have to do everything by roll call. It takes forever. Although I get to say all your names several times a night, so that's kind of exciting. Is there anything else? So we're going to institute a new thing tonight too, that the chair will adjourn the meeting. We won't go through a whole nother roll call on that. So seeing there's no other business before the Finance Committee, I want to thank Evan and Mary and William for being here tonight. I want to thank Carter. I want to thank all the committee members. I think this was a great meeting tonight. And I appreciate everybody being here tonight. And I will say, oh, go ahead, Barry. You're not going to let me end the meeting?
Not yet. I wanted to thank Mary for providing the entertainment of the dancing little girl. And oh, here she is.
Thank you, Mary. No, that's great. We enjoy that. My
Yeah.
favorite moment in Zoom is like we're having this very important meeting and we're talking about this very important issue and the town clerk is there and all of a sudden his cat walked across the screen and it just broke up the whole room, changed the and it was great. So you're
Hey, at least
having
he
the,
didn't have a cat filter on his face.
yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. That was funny. I like that one.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll call adjourned and we'll see you all on March 6th.